59. So in just a moment, I'll ask the mayor to call the meeting to order. All right, it is 7 o'clock. This is Eric Berlin. I'm the city administrator in North Kansas City. And this is our regular meeting for April 7th, which is being held virtually due to recommendations of the Centers for Disease Control and the state of emergency that's been declared by the city of North Kansas City and the stay-at-home order issued by Mayor Don Stilo and the Clay County Health Department. This meeting is being held virtually with the mayor, city council members, and city staff joining the meeting in an online platform. The public may view the meeting live on Channel 2, the city's cable channel, or the city's YouTube channel, which can be found on the city's website at nkc.org/live. I'd like to ask the city clerk to call the roll, please.
Councilmember Pearman.
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger.
Here.
Councilmember Stewart.
Present.
Councilmember Steffen.
Here.
Councilmember Farr.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong.
Here.
Councilmember Pierce.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Thank you. And I would just like to note for the record, staff members, city staff members who are logged into the meeting are watching and but are muted, but who are available if you have any questions of them tonight. And those include Finance Manager Nick Hawkins, City Councilor Tom Barzee, IT Manager Stephen Roberts, Community Development Director Sarah Copeland, Public Works Director Pat Hauver, Fire Chief Dave Hargis, Police Chief Kevin Freeman, Assistant City Administrator Kim Nakahodo, and City Clerk Crystal Doss, and myself, Eric Berlin, City Administrator. At this time, could I ask everyone to unmute themselves and join in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United
States of America,
To
the republic
for
which it stands,
and
One
nation
under God,
indivisible,
visible,
with liberty and justice for all.
justice
for all.
for all. All right. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. So at this time, I'd ask the mayor to entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Councilmember Clevenger moved and Councilmember DeLong seconded. Could the city clerk call the roll, please?
Councilmember Pearman.
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yes.
Councilmember Steffen. Councilmember Steffen.
Yes.
Councilmember Farr.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong.
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce.
yes,
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
The vote was 8-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The next item is comments from the public. And we did invite the public to submit comments ahead of the meeting to be read into the record. We did receive one comment from the public, which I will now read. It is from the River North KC organization. There is a brief cover email, and then there is a letter attached to it. So first I'll read the cover email. It reads, despite the legal consultation from Mr. Barzee, I am posting an appeal for help on behalf of the nearly 50 independently owned storefronts of North Kansas City, and ask that city staff and council members alike put their energy into finding creative ways to help our storefronts at their greatest time of need. They are already chartered in a state that is currently not working to help support them after asking them to sacrifice their business in the interest of public health. And federal programs are so bloated and backed up that many will not survive the time it will take to get relief to them. This is the time when neighbors need to support neighbors. If the money is there, The way the city can use it to bridge the gap between a very uncertain now and the time it takes for them to finally see any federal relief will be the difference between life and death for the unique staples of North Kansas City. Please consider the enclosed appeal as you deliberate assistance at tonight's meeting. Thank you, Joe, that being Joe Gower of River North. And I'll now read the letter that was submitted. It's dated today, and it reads, Dear City Council members and members of city staff, on behalf of the 50 independently owned retail storefronts, eateries, taverns, and brewery tap rooms in North Kansas City, members and non-members, I wish to express the dire situation faced by everyone in the service industry due to coronavirus closures. The council should be applauded for its efforts to take precautionary measures ensuring the public health of North Kansas City. In response to these orders, every one of the service industry businesses has closed its doors and dining rooms to hastily convert 100% of their operations to delivery and curbside service. They're looking out for us and our public health, and now it's time to repay the favor and look out for them. As you know, our town and its storefronts have faced its share of challenges among years of unprecedented change. Years after the smoking ban changed the face of bar and tavern-lined Swift Street, legacy businesses witnessed changing taste and age demographics, street and parking changes and challenges, the closing of North Kansas City High School open lunch, and a multitude of new competition entering our market. Those who have survived the years have done so with resiliency and a willingness for self-reinvention. The little store as a prime example. And the town has remarkably stayed, for the most part, sustainable for having tripled in its number of food and drink choices. Many of the wave of newcomers have reached the 5-year mark in North Kansas City, which is no small accomplishment for an industry with the survival rate that service industry has. All of that said, this is a challenge that owners cannot invent their way out of without assistance. And the number of businesses we lose to this pandemic could determine our town's appeal to the 10 times visitor to resident ratio we've traditionally welcomed on a weekly basis. Overnight, every one of our food and drink establishments, most of which operate on a precarious week-to-week footing going into the pandemic, were forced to either close their doors, possibly for good, or cut loose any extra staff and convert to a to-go operation, in most cases shrinking their vital revenues to a fraction of what is needed to survive. For those still in operation, we've done our part alongside the Business Council and with assistance from city staff to organize business leaders and get still open information out to the public at nkcgo.com. We understand that the small business emergency is nationwide, but the remedies prescribed by the federal government are rushed and being tied up in banking channels. There's controversy between Congress, who refer to a $10,000 emergency EIDL payment to every small business as a grant, and the SBA, Small Business Administration, who administers the money as an advance, as in there will be expectations of taking that out of their loan payment if and when it arrives. We have gladly given up the final month of our first half second Saturday marketing dollars to help promote the joint nkcgo.com effort. But even if we dedicate the entire second half of the grant, that will only mean a couple $1,000s to remind people that takeout exists. It's not enough, especially for those that need help in expanding their delivery and material safe, minimal contact curbside options to provide the peace of mind patrons need at a time they are only asked to leave their house for essential errands. These businesses who we ask to give up everything will require help reinventing themselves, or at the very least surviving long enough to receive emergency federal funds that so far only exist in theory. On top of funds to bring them up to safety standards, they need us to have their backs on rent abatement, tax deferrals, and eviction protection. If the concern of the city is that funds will be doubling up on assistance already coming from the federal government, I don't think it's unreasonable for the city to consider any funds granted to be in advance on those emergency federal funds, and ask for repayment if and when emergency EIDL grants ever wind up materializing. From Chapels to Colony to Screenland, Paul and Jack's and Pat's Pub, past and present icons that are the heart and soul of our small town are at stake. I thank you for your consideration. Joe Gower, co-founder, River North District Business League. That concludes comments from the public. The Next item on the agenda is, excuse me, the consent agenda. It's comprised of items 6 and 7. Approval of regular council meeting minutes from March 17th, 2020, and proclamation for local government week. I'd ask the mayor to entertain a motion for approving the consent agenda.
Need a motion for a consent agenda?
Councilmember Farr, seconded by Councilmember Smith. Will the city clerk call the roll, please? Oh, excuse me. Councilmember DeLong has a question.
I got a question on the order of this. Do we have to have this vocalized, or can this be hand raising to do a first and second?
Well, we had said, and I know that it will take longer and all, but I think for the record, we should do roll calls. We should have a.
But I mean, even to call for a motion. There's no actual call for a motion there.
Right. I'm not sure I'm following, sir.
So no one actually made a motion there.
Well, I saw 2 raised hands, so I recognized people who had made a motion and seconded. I did it just visually. Would you prefer if you done some other way? That was what I saw. 2 members raise their hand. If that's acceptable to council.
Okay, procedurally, I was just wondering if that was. All right, that's fine.
It's just that to have all of you unmuted at the same time can be very difficult to hear. So this is the procedure we had agreed on. If it's,
I'm sorry, I thought you meant someone to raise their hand and you would call on them, and then they would make the motion. That was my.
Oh.
For example, you saw Tom raise his hand, and then you would have Tom. But it's whatever we feel. Whatever we feel works for you.
I'd be happy to do it that way going forward tonight. We'll handle it that way. I do have I forget now who I said were the first and second.
Councilmember Farr made the motion, seconded by Councilmember Smith.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. So with that, could you call the roll to approve the consent agenda, please?
Yes. Councilmember Pearman,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan, Councilmember Stefan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
8-0. And so the next item is number 8, extension of ordinance establishing emergency policies and procedures, bill number 7500, ordinance number 9297.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, I'd like to call on the City Councilor, Tom Barzee.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. I hope you can all hear me. Okay, good. Before you this evening, it was just at our last meeting 3 weeks ago that you passed what I deem to be a pretty special type of an ordinance providing for certain procedures and policies during this health emergency that we've been having that is still ongoing, and granting the mayor certain emergency authority. As you know, he issued a health state of an emergency, a proclamation, as well as 2 orders, the last of which is the one that has had the stay at home, if you will, order that extends until April the 24th. That was done, as you well know, to coincide with the other similar orders done by Kansas City and Clay County that use the same date. Ours use the almost identical language, only changing it where it was appropriate to change it for North Kansas City. But as you'll recall, in that ordinance that was passed 3 weeks ago, granting the special authority, that ordinance is to expire, on Wednesday, April 22nd, which of course is even 2 days before the order number 2, the stay-at-home order, would expire. And we felt that it would be most appropriate to bring that back now because of the uncertainty moving forward over the next several weeks. There may be a better way to do it, but this time the extension would be extending it to 10 days past the termination of either the federal order or the state order declaring either the national emergency or the state emergency, and extend 10 days beyond that. You might think, well, why does it need to go beyond that? Because candidly, in a fast-moving emergency, a lot of things could happen, and I'd rather have the mayor have the authority to continue this. These things could expire unwittingly, even. Of course, if you don't need it, he won't use it. But I'd like to have the authority to get back to you folks to make the ultimate decision, hence the 10 days. And this avoids coming back and doing this again. We originally talked about, Mr. Berlin and I talked about extending it until May the 6th, okay? That's after your first council meeting in May. But I thought that, after we keep seeing things happen and things keep moving and progressing, that it might make the most sense to have kind of more of an open-ended order, but to end at the time, an open-ended ordinance that would end at the time, immediately after the time of the termination of a national emergency and the state emergency.
Councilmember Clevenger has a question.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Question is, as far as, and I thank you, Tom, for the breakdown of the 10 days. That was my question, is why we have it. It's basically a backstop, is what you're saying. So let's say, for example, the state one ends, the emergency order ends on May 15th. And we hope everything is good by then, but we obviously don't know. So let's say then, does the mayor have to use those days, or those just, if he needs them, he has them? If he thinks and staff thinks that everything's okay by a certain date when the Missouri one expires and we're starting to open things back up, you necessarily wouldn't have to use the 10 days, but there are backstop if we do. Is that a correct assumption?
Yeah, and yes, I understand exactly what you're asking. Excellent question, Councilman Clevenger. No, the mayor is not going to use any of these authorities. He prefer not to use any of them whatsoever. And if everything ends by May the 15th or April the 24th, excellent. We all would be cheering big time if it happens that way. And let's hope that it does. But I've heard a lot of things, I'm sure, as we all have. And so, even the president says that he's not really looking things to be back to normal until like the 1st of June. And that's certainly, another couple of weeks past the governor's order that expires, as you mentioned, on May the 15th. And that's the only reason. This is not trying to give the mayor extra power and authority. I'm speaking with my hands, and I don't know why I'm doing that. None of you can see me anyway. But I hope it makes some sense of why we're doing it this way. It's not for any other particular reason. It's just so we don't have to have this discussion again in a couple of more weeks. That's really what it's about. Oh, and I've discussed it. Well, lastly, I put it in the memo. The city attorney, Anthony Bologna, and I had a lengthy conversation about this, and he does like the way the order is structured because it gives, he believes, an ability to enforce it. And I know Anthony then has talked to Chief Freeman as well about that, if in fact it becomes important that be done. Hopefully not.
Are there any other questions or discussion on this item? Seeing none, I would ask the mayor to entertain a motion for first reading.
Entertain a motion.
Councilmember Clevenger, do you make a motion?
I make the motion to approve, let's see here. Let's see, first reading. I make the motion to make the first reading.
Second.
And, okay, thank you, sir. And with that, I will ask the city clerk to call the roll.
I'm sorry, who made the second, please?
Councilmember Farr.
Okay. Councilmember Pearman,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
An ordinance amending ordinance number 9296 and extending the time period within which ordinance number 9296 shall remain in full force and effect, continuing all policies and procedures during the stated health and safety emergency within the city of North Kansas City, Missouri, and extending the grant of emergency powers and authority to the mayor and city administrator.
Would somebody make a motion for second reading? Councilmember Clevenger?
Yeah, I make the motion that bill number 7500 be placed on second and final reading and pass as ordinance number 9297.
Second.
Councilmember Pearman,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Okay, and the vote was 8-0. An ordinance amending ordinance number 9296 and extending the time period within which ordinance number 9296 shall remain in full force and effect, continuing all policies and procedures during the stated health and safety emergency within the city of North Kansas City, Missouri, and extending the grant of emergency powers and authority to the mayor and city administrator. Number 9, budget amendment, Gentry Street drainage improvements, resolution number 20-15.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And at this time, I'd like to call on the Public Works Director, Pat Hopper.
Thank you. The 2019 Transportation Fund budget contained $80,000 for funding for a project to construct street drainage improvements on the 1100 block of Gentry. The necessary design and contract preparation activities were not completed in time. There were delays with engineering, and the staff determined it was getting too late in the summer and to start a project like this, and it probably wouldn't have started till October. We just decided to carry it over. The 1100 block of Gentry has been overlaid several times throughout the years, and without being milled first. I know that's not the practice of these days, in the road district, but years ago they would just mill it. So there's no curbs left, and it's a big drainage problem. What it needs is, what the engineering design includes is the removal and replacement of a portion of the street, installation of new curbs on both sides of the street, in extension of a storm sewer line halfway down the street, and then 2 catch basins to catch the low area that is going to be created. Prior to discovering the project was not carried over in the 2020 budget, a request for proposals was published, and 7 bids were received on March 5th, 2020. The lowest and best bid was determined to be submitted by Gunter Construction Company in the amount of $124,523. In order to approve the contract with Gunter and move forward with the project, it is necessary for the City Council to approve a budget resolution amending the 2020 Transportation Fund budget by appropriating a $130,749, which includes a 5% contingency of $6,226 from the transportation plan to the capital outlay infrastructure account. And like I said, somehow it was late in the budget season. This didn't get included in the budget, although it was supposed to. And I'm ultimately responsible for that. So I'll take the blame on it.
If I could make one point real quick before I call on Councilmember Stewart, who I see is asking to be recognized. I, from my point of view, I think this is best thought as a budget amendment request in the amount of about $50,749,000, in that the $80,000 that was in the fiscal year 2019 budget was never spent. So it was returned to the fund balance. So this project is coming over what was originally budgeted, but the originally budgeted amount of $80,000 is there in the fund waiting to be used, if that makes sense. Councilmember Stewart, you had a question?
Yeah, well, you may have just answered by saying that it was in the 2019 budget for how much? 80,000?
Yes, sir.
And they want what now?
So we're asking for a budget amendment of $130,749. So there were aspects of the project itself that we didn't recognize when we originally designed the work. It ended up being a more complicated project once designed than had been anticipated when it was budgeted.
Well, you know, I understand, but it's poor timing to add to the budget. I mean, it's not even going to look good when you start adding things to the budget, in my opinion, even though the work needs to be done. We don't know where we're going to end up in the budget. This could be another 2008-9. We had let 40 employees or so go. Just a thought.
And I do understand, sir, and at some point I would like to respond to it, but I see Councilmember DeLong has a point or a question.
Yes, my question relates to, so in the memo, it says it's been overlaid several times that resulted in drainage problems that's requiring all this work to be done. And all that was done by another political subdivision. So why are we fronting the cost to fix what they've messed up?
I'll venture an answer, and Pat, feel free to jump in. You know, as to things that happened in past decades, we don't really have a particular view, but the problems that are occurring now have to do with drainage. We did talk to the road district about, you know, who should fund this project, and they are, in fact, they have participated in the funding of this project. In fact, they milled the street, which of course is something that needed to be done for this to be done. And the part of the issue and part of the reason that we are submitting this to you tonight and asking you to move it forward, even though we understand the budgetary issue that Councilmember Stewart's mentioning, is that the street has been milled. And it's just sitting there waiting for pavement now. And that's not really a good condition, a proper condition for the street to be in. So unfortunately, the project is kind of in flux. The road district did mill it. Now it's waiting for the city to come along and finish it. Another reason that we're bringing this forward is that I had indicated to you that we would bring to you projects that were in the pipeline. And in terms of that, this project had been bid out. In fact, we did have this on your agenda for award on March 17th, but because of the special nature of that meeting, I might ask council members to mute themselves. Because of the special nature of that meeting, we did push it. But for those reasons, we did think that's why we thought we should bring it forward to you and recommend that you move forward. I do understand the point that Councilmember Stewart made. Councilmember DeLong.
So, okay, but I did want to clarify, all the work that needs to be done, though, is a result of this being overlaid several times without being milled.
Mayor Stila.
Yeah, I would like to jump in on this. Actually, this road is down there between the heavy builder steel is what it is. And whereas the road district can redo roads, we really can't do drainage. So therefore, the city has to get in there and fix the drainage, then we will go back and finish the road.
Councilmember DeLong.
But if these other things are a result of work being done improperly to begin with, could we not go after the road district to reimburse us for the work we're doing to fix the mistake?
Mr. Berlin, can I answer that?
Sure, go ahead, Pat.
I don't know what you mean about someone make a mistake. Are you talking about in the past, they overlaid without milling?
And yeah, in general, that's the way it seems. I think at least that's the way I read it to be, is that it just kept getting overlaid, and then it says that resulted in drainage problems.
Okay, that street is almost 100 years old. We know that for a fact. And this overlaying, they didn't mill and overlay years and years ago. And so I think that's the problem. It's just, and we have other streets throughout the city that are like that, especially in the industrial areas.
Thank you.
Councilmember Clevenger.
Yeah, I definitely, as far as drainage, we want it to drain properly. I believe also from reading in the memo that this builder's still there waiting on us to get our work done so that they can do some work on their property as well.
Yeah, Pat, can you speak to that, please?
I'm not aware of that.
Oh, Pat, sure you are. No, this is the work that they're going to be doing in concert with the work that we're doing, or we would do if the council awarded the contract.
Sure, I'm sorry. When we talked to them about this project, they were very excited about it. In fact, they approached someone about it before. And once they found out that we have to do some approaches, some concrete work, they wanted to work with the city and put in replace a couple of driveway approaches that were all cracked up. And so through the city, we had an agreement with them last year. And the agreement stated that we will put that as an alternate bid. In other words, the bids come in and over on the side is an alternate bid to do so many square feet of concrete. And so when the bid came in under that agreement, I brought the bid over and met with them. They accepted the bid. They paid us for that amount that was bid plus 10% extra. So there will be, and then if there's additional change orders, they will pay for it. So there's no risk to the city. We're just cooperating with them during construction.
Do we have a mechanism in place now to ensure that this doesn't happen again with our road district? And I'm not blaming the road district or the city, but in the future going forward, for just not overlaying streets, if they need to be milled after a certain amount of overlays, that we do that. I'm sure that we have something in place.
Mayor Stila.
Yes, the road district has hired Clay, what the hell, the guy.
McConnell, sir.
Yeah, no, McConnell, they're the contractors, but Bear Kistler, he's our resident, he's an employee for the road district, and he knows what's going on.
Councilmember Smith, and then Councilmember Stewart. Councilmember Smith.
So if I'm understanding correctly, when was the last time this was overlaid? How long ago did that happen? Do we know?
No one has any idea.
Okay. And you mentioned there are other streets also that have this issue that have been overlaid up to the curb with asphalt.
Yes, there are. This is one of the worst. Yes.
If you drove around the old industrial area, Councilmember Smith, you would see quite a few where the curb is hardly an inch high. And that's sort of because best practices have changed. And years ago, that wasn't recognized as a necessary practice, but now it is.
So milling the road when it was theoretically last done wasn't a thing that was known to be beneficial. So what I'm getting at is if we've got this one, then we've got a few more coming down the pipe, this could start becoming a large expense to the city. We may need to work with the road district because at a certain point, they were the ones repaving the road over top. And I'm not blaming current members, but it is something that is a result of that work. So if we're going to be paying for each of these roads then to be milled or to be resurfaced after milling, that'll become a large line item for years to come. So we may need to have a frank discussion with the road district to save us some money on these kind of things.
And Councilmember Stewart, and then I know that Councilmember Stewart wanted to make a comment, and then Mr. Mayor, I'd call on you.
A couple things. I don't think we had a road district back in the years. They kept just putting layer after layer on it. It's just the way it was done. But I want to withdraw anything in my concern on the budget. I didn't know it was already milled. I mean, we got to finish the job. So that's all.
And Mayor Sela.
In most cases, we don't have a problem with drainage. So when we wrote a mill of street, we can put it back original. In this particular street, we had a drainage problem, had a drainage problem for years. And to fix it and fix it right, we have to fix the drainage before we can fix the road.
Are there any more questions or discussion? Is there any other? All right, seeing none, Mr. Mayor, I suggest that you entertain a motion.
Move. Any entertain a motion?
Councilmember Farr.
Rita.
So Councilmember Farr, could you verbalize the motion, please?
So moved.
And Councilmember Pierce, were you the second on this?
Second, it was me.
Oh, Councilmember Pierman, excuse me. All right, so there's a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, could you call the roll, please?
Yeah, thank you. Councilmember Pierman,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
No.
Councilmember Pierce,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
The resolution passes 7-1. And the next item is number 10, award of contract, Gentry Street Drainage Improvements, resolution number 20-016.
Thank you. Again, I'll call on Public Works Director Pat Hauber.
Well, the memo introducing the contract is pretty much exactly the memo we went over. It says the same details, but it does show the bid summary. And the low bid was Gunter, and they came with great qualifications. And Mr. Barzee has prepared a contract.
Are there any questions? If not, is there somebody? Well, who would like to make a motion? Councilmember Stewart, could you verbalize, please?
Move to approve.
Second.
And all right, thank you. Madam Clerk, could you call the roll, please?
Yes, was the second Councilmember Farr?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Pierman,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
No.
Councilmember Pierce,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Resolution number 20-016 passes 7-1. And the next item is House Street Bump Outs Task Order Resolution number 20-017.
Thank you. And at this time, I'd like to call on the Community Development Director, Sarah Copeland.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Last summer, the city installed a pilot project on Howell Street, putting in temporary bump outs to try to slow speeds down to the speed limit for Howell Street of 20 miles an hour. Over the winter, we asked council for direction on how to make those bump outs more permanent. And the direction you gave us was to work towards permanent construction of these types of improvements. On March 3rd, which feels like a long time ago, the council approved a budget amendment to provide funds for the installation of the permanent bump outs, including both the development of construction plans by the city engineer and an amount of money for the eventual construction. What's before you tonight is the approval of a task order with Wilson and Company, the city engineer, to put together the construction documents for the permanent improvements on Howell Street. This includes the survey of the area so that Wilson and Company can ensure that the new construction will provide for proper stormwater drainage, and modeling turning movements for the fire department's largest vehicle, the ladder truck, to ensure that it can maneuver through the intersections and make turns post-construction. We do expect that the final construction will exceed the threshold for competitive bidding. So these plans are expected to be complete in May, and then they would be put out to bid. The conceptual plans that Wilson and Company put together were attached to the council memo in your packet if you need a refresher of what these improvements are expected to look like when they're finished. And I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Councilmember Clevenger.
Yes, I know that this is one of the projects that you're bringing toward us that's in the pipeline. For some reason, if we decided not to, I mean, I'm all for the improvements here. I'm just not sure if now's the right time to be spending the money on it. Although I guess if the money's already budgeted, it has to go to that project. It can't just be thrown back in to the budget or for the general fund and come back at a later date. I like the project. My only question is this the right time to be spending the money on an aesthetic thing when we've got the functionality of the delineators there now? I know they're not very pretty, but that's just my question.
I would say one of the things to keep in mind is that the delineators are there now, but we were not able to keep the center posts up on a permanent basis because they were continually being struck. Those are an important part of keeping the speeds down, particularly at off-peak times. And so while the other components on the side of the road are still there, they are an ongoing maintenance concern for us. While yes, there is an aesthetic improvement here, really this is designed to be a safety improvement to slow the speeds, and that's the center, it will turn into a center median, but that's a really important part of getting the speed reduction that we're really looking for.
I'll just add my 2 cents, and then I think Councilmember Smith, and I see Councilmember Pearman, so I'll call on you each in turn. This is certainly more discretionary than the last project that you considered. You could, if you wish, tell us to keep it in its current state for a period of time, but that is entirely your call. Councilmember Smith.
I was actually going to make the point that Sarah just did, that the center posts are kind of the key to keeping speeds down, particularly when they're not two cars going in either direction. Without them, speeds have just kind of gone back to what they were before. So this is pretty important to getting those permanent center islands. But I do understand Zach's concern over is the timing right?
Councilmember Pearman and then Councilmember DeLong.
Eric, I wanted to know your thoughts about what Councilmember Clevenger said regarding putting funds back into the budget, because I think several of us have, financial concerns going into the next 6 months. We don't really know what's ahead, and so I know I'm a little, nervous even with this one, which I'm very much in support of. Voting in favor of it and proceeding. I just would like to have a little bit better idea of kind of what the options are in terms of spending and budgeting from the 2020 budget.
You could certainly put the funds back in the budget. If you elected not to proceed, then the funds would just remain in the fund balance, and then they could be reallocated next year or whatever you'd like to do. But there's certainly no rule that just because it's budgeted, you therefore have to spend it now. Does that answer your question, ma'am? Yeah. And Councilmember DeLong.
Okay, and I can't remember if Zach asked this or not. This is for the engineering services. So we could have this done, but not actually do the construction. We could hold on to construction. So if you get the budget numbers back and say, whoa, this is way worse than we thought, we can still hold on construction and save those engineering plans for a later date.
Yes, this
you could do
task
that.
order, this task order is just $9,800 for the engineering. At the end of this work, we would have construction documents that then we could either hold or move forward with construction.
And those don't have, I'm not an engineer, those don't have expiration dates on them. Those are good till, or is there some sort of, I don't know, time frame you want to get the work done within?
They don't really expire as long as no conditions change, because
Okay,
there will be
okay.
survey associated with it.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Eric, you're muted.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'll call on Councilmember Clevenger and then Councilmember Smith.
Thank you. The only thing I wanted to say is I was unaware kind of the safety issue. Certainly it's something that I think we need to do, whether it's now, I guess we could do the engineering work and then down the road, heck, you might even get a cheaper contract if things are, business is slower. But so I'm kind of torn there, but thank you for letting us know about the structural, the impact as far as the safety.
Councilmember Smith, and then Mayor Stilo, and then Councilmember DeLong. Councilmember Smith.
If I remember correctly, we're also trying to line this up with the milling of the road by the road district. So I'm curious about the time frame, if they're still planning to do that in the near future, and if so, how will that interact with all of this?
Mayor Stilo.
Yes, the road district, it is our intent that as soon as the city gets the bump outs fixed in there, then the road district is going to completely resurface Howell from curb to curb. So we can't do it until you get the bump outs in.
Councilmember DeLong.
Yeah, and that's on my transportation infrastructure call the other day. And there could be a chance there's a big infrastructure package coming down the pipeline too, which I don't know if this one would apply, but there's going to be potentially a lot of grant money out there in the future too. But a lot of that's going to be contingent on having projects ready to go. So I really don't think it would hurt to go ahead and have the engineering ready in case maybe there is something you could qualify for. Of course, no one really knows, a lot of speculation about what's going on right now, but just want to throw that out there too.
Is there any more questions or discussion? In that case, Mayor Stila, you may wish to entertain, Councilmember DeLong, or you're making a motion, it sounds like. Mayor Stila, would you like to entertain a motion, please?
You make a motion?
I move to approve resolution so I'm sorry, did you call me Eric?
You called Councilmember DeLong.
Okay. I move to approve resolution number 20017.
And Councilmember Pierce.
I second the motion.
Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Pearman,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Resolution number 20-017 passed unanimously 8-0. Number 12, letter agreement for professional services with Olson Incorporated pursuant to Mackin Park Ballfield Diamond number 1 improvements design. Resolution number 20-021.
Thank you. This item regards the Mackin Park ball field project. At its meeting on March 3rd, the City Council approved a contract with the Clark Anderson Partners for design of improvements to Mackin Park ball field diamond number 1. Engineering aspects that must be performed to allow for design to be completed include a topographical design survey and geotechnical exploration. At the city's request, Clark Anderson sought a proposal from Olson Incorporated, a North Kansas City firm with which the city has a great deal of experience, to provide these services. Olson's provided a proposal for the site survey and geotechnical work in the amount of $16,450, which Clark Anderson considers to be a fair price for the services, and Clark Anderson does recommend moving forward with them. Again, this is a project that is kind of right in the middle. You had already awarded the design contract. We also have a partnership with the school district on this project. I did consult the school district prior to putting this matter on your agenda. They are in favor of moving forward. And since this is an aspect of design and you'd already approved the design contract, it seemed appropriate to bring it forward to you tonight to get it to that point. It's sort of in line with the previous discussion you've had. I mean, when we get the project designed, then whether to proceed with construction will be a whole nother thing. Hopefully we'll be out of the emergency period by the time that there is a construction project that's ready to bid. But this is an aspect of design that we did believe it was appropriate to move forward to you. Are there any questions? Mr. Mayor, you might want to entertain a motion.
We may have a motion.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second. Right, a second.
So Councilmember Farr, seconded by Councilmember DeLong. Madam Clerk, could you call the roll, please?
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Pearman,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Steffen,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Resolution number 20-021 passed 8-0. Number 13, change to traffic pattern Knox Street south of 14th Avenue and 13th Avenue between Knox and Jasper. Resolution number 20-022.
Thank you. City staff has been working with the Rabbit Hole, with which I believe you're all familiar, and they are currently in the middle of construction. Some time ago, as Rabbit Hole representatives and city staff were looking at their future plans, staff suggested that given the configuration of the street and future traffic flow, it might be a good idea to make Knox south of East 14th Avenue one-way southbound. At its meeting of February 4th, the council approved a license agreement for the Rabbit Hole, allowing it to construct a patio space that will incorporate an accessible ramp entry on the Knox side of the building that will extend into the city's right-of-way. We have provided the site plan that was part of that agenda item. The approval essentially assumed that Knox Street would be one-way southbound, although it could be constructed without it, but I think that was the assumption when they designed it. Also, the Rabbit Hole is proposing that some 45-degree spaces be installed on the west side of Knox Street. And we do think that having as many spaces for the facility as possible in the area would be a good thing. And that also assumed a one-way southbound configuration. So we have developed for your consideration a change to the traffic flow that would make Knox one-way southbound and then 13th Street one-way westbound up until Jasper, at which point it would then revert to being a two-way street. There's only one business on 13th Avenue that would be affected by that, and that's McConnell Associates. The police chief did have a discussion with Scott McConnell, who did not indicate any concerns about. He indicated that it was acceptable to them. So at this time, we would recommend that change. Do you have any questions? Seeing none, Mr. Mayor, you might want to entertain a motion.
Entertain a motion.
Councilmember DeLong.
Move to approve resolution 20022.
I second.
Madam Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Pearman,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Steffen,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Resolution number 20-022 passed unanimously 8-0. Number 14, budget amendment, Ground Emergency Medical Transport, GEMT program, resolution number 20-019.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to call in the Fire Chief, Dave Hargis.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The budget amendment before you tonight is for a program that we have entered into with the state of Missouri and the federal government to get reimbursement for Medicare transports. We had initially budgeted about $60,000 that we were going to receive in revenue. We found out just prior to the last council meeting, we were going to get about $150,000 back. But in order to do that, we need to front $80,000 or $88,000 to the state to cover their cost. And then by June 30th, we'll be reimbursed that amount plus the $154,000 in revenue. I'd ask Eric and the mayor to go ahead and get this done prior to this council meeting, because in the past we'd had problems with EFT transfers, and we needed to get this done because this is just a true revenue stream that we didn't want to pass up. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them at this time.
Does anyone have any questions? Seeing none, I'd suggest, Mr. Mayor, you entertain a motion.
Entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Councilmember Stefan, will you verbalize, please?
Second.
Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Councilmember Pearman,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Resolution number 20-019 passed unanimously 8-0. Number 15, change order number 1, ARRA Phase 2B improvements, resolution number 20-023.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to call in the Community Development Director, Sarah Copeland.
This item calls for formal action by the council on a change order that was discussed under staff comments at your March 3rd meeting. The Phase 2B improvements include a water line extension on the south side of Armour Road from just on the west side of Vernon over to Taney Street. This is work that couldn't be done until Burger King had built their new building and relocated. Shortly after Mega Industries mobilized to begin the work, they found that the lead time for the PVC water main pipe that was called for in the bid documents would be 8 to 12 weeks, which was going to have a significant impact not only on our project, but on the completion of the Starbucks that's under construction at that location. So they suggested a change to ductile iron for the water main. We received the change order request the day before your March 3rd meeting, and the council informally indicated its support for approving the change order. So staff did, give Mega the go ahead to do that, and they have mobilized and started their construction with the ductile iron pipe. This is before you now for formal approval, but it is already work that's underway. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. I would also point out that this change order is still under the total budget for the project. We would still have, after this change order, $39,860 remaining in the budget for this project.
Are there any questions?
Entertain a
Move
motion.
to approve.
Second.
I'm sorry, who was the second?
Me.
Councilmember.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Pearman,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Resolution number 20-023 passed unanimously, 8-0. Number 16, First Amendment to Contract Services Agreement for Appraisal Services with Al Donahoe, doing business as Donahoe Appraisals, resolution number 20-020.
Thank you. I'd just like to note before I call on the city council that there is an error in the agenda comment. It states that on September 17th, 2020, the city council passed and the mayor approved resolution number 19-064. It was actually September 17th, 2019. I believe that was stated incorrectly in the memo that was in the packet as well. Having put that on the record, I'd like to call on the city councilor, Tom Barzee.
Yes, this is simply, the city entered into a contract with Al Donahoe to provide both appraisal and right-of-way agent services related to the Burlington Corridor Complete Street project. This is something that's required by federal regulations. And we noticed, in fact, I think it was Ms. Copeland brought it to my attention that the agreement with Mr. Donahoe, the time period was going to expire on April the 15th. And part of his work going out and meeting with people, et cetera, and it's something he can't finish at this stage because of the ongoing situation. So we got out in front of it, and we just kind of arbitrarily selected, Ms. Copeland and I did, the date of extending the term to August the 15th. And I do want to remind you of a very important thing. It's part of when we brought the agreement to you, as well as now. This is for just extending the term. No offers are going to be made to acquire any right-of-way or any easements without coming back to you folks to let you know what those numbers would be and to have that discussion then. Okay? This is simply extending the term of the agreement for several months so that this work can get completed. I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have, but this is not for acquisition of any properties. Like I say, we will bring those back to you when we're ready to do that.
Are there any questions? Mr. Mayor, would you like to entertain a motion? No.
Move to approve.
Second.
Councilmember Clevenger, seconded by Councilmember Farr. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
Yes, sorry. Councilmember Pearman,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Resolution number 20-020 passed unanimously, 8-0. Number 17, renewal of contract with Westlaw for computer-assisted legal research. Resolution number 20-024.
I'd like to call on Mr. Barzee.
Thank you, Mr. Berlin. Hopefully some of you remember this. This is an annual contract that we have with Westlaw. To make it simple, this is what gives me access to law, all from federal and state, to be able to do research, et cetera. It used to be in the days when I first practiced law, every law firm, everyone had a bunch of books. And we spent a lot more money on books each year back then than this is, but it's still a fairly costly amount of money. But it is how, it's my ability to be able to do research and to provide you with legal opinions on matters, to address issues that come up with various departments, et cetera. I'll be glad to answer any questions if you have any.
Mr. Mayor, would you like to call for a motion?
Call for a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
It was Councilmember Farr, seconded by Councilmember Pearman.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Pearman,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Steffen,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Resolution number 20-024 passed unanimously. Number 18, consideration of small business assistance.
This is an item that was added to the agenda by Councilmember DeLong. Councilmember DeLong.
Okay, thank you. As you guys all saw the letter from Tom Barzee, part of my original plan was to create a grant fund, but that is on hold right now based on the opinion we received from Tom Barzee. But I would definitely still ask us to be creative. As Joe noted in his letter, be creative and try to think of ideas that we can help our small businesses in any way possible, whether that be reducing or relaxing regulations. As well as I also want to thank the mayor for signing the order for the curbside alcohol pickup to help some of our restaurants that stocked up on alcohol for a Big Snake Saturday that they never got to have. So definitely appreciate the mayor's efforts on passing that. But I mean, just potentially considering other stuff like designating parking spaces out in front of some of these restaurants for carry-out orders. I mean, obviously, we don't want to encourage large congregations with a stay-at-home order, but we certainly want these businesses to survive, because without them surviving, we lose a lot of sales tax revenue that's very important to the city, as well as these restaurant and entertainment employ 2,000 plus jobs here in North Kansas City. So it's definitely big for our residents, and I think big for our revenue to try to help these where we can. But since I got the opinion from Tom Barzee, my main item is I no longer have that. So again, it would just be, I will now just change this to a challenge to staff to continue to work with businesses to find ways to help our small businesses. Thank you.
If I could just make one comment, and then I'll call on Councilmember Pearman. Just with regard to the parking spaces that you mentioned, there are some businesses that have designated parking spaces in public on-street parking spaces. Staff's intention would be not to take any action in response to that, recognizing that we're in a special time. But we have noticed that Chicken and Pickle, I saw, has a couple of spaces on Burlington, and the Hawaiian Brothers has some spaces on Buchanan and Armour, and I don't know if there are any others, but this is one in which we would definitely look the other way for sure. Did you have a follow-up, Councilmember DeLong, and then I'll call on Councilmember Pearman?
If she wants to go first, mine was just kind of to follow up what you just said. So however you want to.
That's
you
fine.
want to go ahead?
Go ahead.
Okay. If we could potentially, I don't know, put that out there somehow, so the business know it, because there might be businesses that might want to consider doing something like that, but as it's written right now, some might not want to go out and just do it. If that makes sense. I mean, they're not going to knowingly violate the rules, where others may be more comfortable with that, as you're saying. But
let us consider a discreet way to do that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Pearman.
I kind of wanted to know if you guys had done any research on what other cities are doing, because obviously we're not the only ones in this situation. And I'm with Councilmember DeLong that this is, really concerning on a large scale with our businesses. And we have a lot of small businesses that don't have necessarily a lot of, resources to fall back on. So I'm curious if staff has done any research or could do any research on what other communities are doing to try to support their, specifically like their local small businesses.
So if I might call on Assistant City Administrator Kim Nakahoto, and then I'll call on Councilmember Smith.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is Kim Nakahoto, just for anybody unfamiliar with my voice over the television. Most places are doing kind of what we're doing, and that is trying to be a point of contact, similar to how we are doing with the nkcgo.com, which is a one-point resource that businesses can list their current operations, whether it be hours of operation, what services they're currently offering, allowing patrons one-stop shop for businesses within a certain community. That was something that both ourselves, the River North team, the North Kansas City Business Council, as well as Mindy Hart from PR Chick, we kind of came together very quickly and got that web presence up. And the city guys are fans or have been following along with the city's communication channels. We have been promoting that through the city's channels, as well as in Joe's letter, he refers to it that some of the marketing dollars that the city has partnered with River North on with Second Saturdays, they have put that money toward those marketing dollars to try to help advertise our local businesses. As the outline in Mr. Barzi's memo states, because of the structure of our city, we are limited in what we can do. But I do think that just pushing the word out and letting as many would-be customers know about our businesses, what hours of operation, what particular services they are offering at that moment is going to be one of the things that we can do in these unlikely times.
Councilmember Smith.
First off, I'd really like to applaud staff and the local contributors on NKC Go. I've been pushing that out as much as I possibly can. It's really, I think it's been helpful. There are a few things that, that have been very frustrating to me from the national and state level. Nationally, these programs, the EIDL and the PPP have just been a mess on the rollout, well-intended, but our businesses, I'm hearing they're struggling. Nobody has seen money from most of this yet, despite the promises. And then the state, our local reps, Lauren Arthur, Wes Rogers, they've been doing a great job getting their opinions in, but they're not being heard. Our state is gridlocked on assistance. And then Kansas City, Missouri put together a wonderful program. I was under the impression they were funding, but it's been privately funded and handled by the Kauffman Foundation and some others. But all that money and the applications were halted after 48 hours. So this is a really tough time for our small businesses. So I'm with Councilman DeLong to encourage staff to continue to work with businesses. If they want to reach out to us as council, and if there's anything we could do, we're happy to help. This is crazy that we just didn't see anything like this for the businesses. Putting public health in the priority is essential, but this is a big one, and we're going to need to do everything we can to help them out. I was very disheartened when I learned that it's illegal for us to give money or any sort of assistance, economic assistance, without immediate reward to the public. One thing I wanted to check into, Eric, you may be able to answer this. I believe there's a national moratorium on evictions for residents and for businesses. Is that in place right now in North Kansas City under the federal order?
I am honestly not sure of the answer to that, sir, but I'll find out and get back to you.
Okay, if we could communicate that out to the businesses as well, if they knew that they would have a little breathing room and they wouldn't have to stress about an eviction pending right away. I know courts are backed up anyway, but that could provide a little bit of breathing room.
I'm somewhat doubtful that whatever that national order is has a national effect, but let me look into it further and we'll get back to you on that.
Thanks.
Councilmember Pierce.
I'm not sure that order applies to businesses, but again, I'm not any more knowledgeable about that. I do know it applies to apartments and things because that's what I do. But I've heard of many people already in our community that are letting rent go for a month or two so businesses can continue to try to survive. I know for a fact that the church who owns the Chinese restaurant let them pass on their rent for this month and probably next month. So I'm curious, that said, if we have any knowledge of buildings of lessees who are letting these people pass for a month or two on their rent, because if that's so, we should acknowledge them somehow, because it's a really great thing to do. And perhaps by acknowledging those people, it will encourage those who are not.
I don't know if we have had knowledge of that up until now, but if we learn of those, then we'll certainly we'll figure out a way to recognize them. Yes, ma'am.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember DeLong.
Sorry, I'm going slightly off topic here. So we have NKC Go for businesses. Do we have a list of resources for residents on our website as well for where they can go get help on stuff? Because a lot of them are already hurting and are really going to be hurting the longer this goes on.
Kim, do you have any comments? Yeah.
So on our website, we do have some resources for both businesses as well as employees and residents. So our website has multiple subpages on there. I invite anybody who is watching at home to visit www.nkc.org/coronavirus. We have pages of RFQs, frequently asked questions, as well as resources for businesses as well as workers. As you guys know, we've had a pretty large national uptick of unemployment, and those who are maybe new to the system may be very unfamiliar with how those processes work. So we have some information on our website for those who are having to file unemployment for the first time as well. Right now, regionally, the 211 Center is trying to be that catch-all to connect those who may be newly unemployed with resources here in the region. I also have been working with Councilman Pierce, referring donations to her organization since we're fortunate to have that resource within our own community. I have been working as kind of the catch-all for all phone calls related to coronavirus situations here in North Kansas City. I've probably fielded over 100 phone calls. Most of those have been businesses. Probably 95% of those phone calls have been businesses. About 5% have been residents that I've been trying to point to direct resources concerning what they're calling about. As you guys know, the city did suspend our water turnoff policy right now. We are still charging if they are late on their payments, but we are not turning anybody's water off, as well as most of the resources within the metro. I'm talking about Spire, and most of the utility companies are working with people in this time, understanding that these are very dynamic situations and people may have cash flow problems. So those resources are as well listed on our website.
Thank you. And I did have a question about the water, but I'll save it for my comments at the end.
I think Councilmember Pierce, you wanted to be recognized.
I did. In regard to everybody turning off the utilities and keeping people in their apartments and that sort of thing, eventually these bills are going to come due. So I'm encouraging people to contact me when they have a disconnect, as you know, and if we can help them, we'll help them then, because the count will keep going. It's like the meter's running. Eventually they're going to want the money, and what's going to happen through my experiences, those bills are not going to be able to be paid by any one agency because they'll be so high. So I would encourage people, if they know of someone who are in these difficult straits and they're facing perhaps turn off, even though they won't turn them off, to reach out to their agencies to try to stave this where it's at now, so that it just doesn't continue to amass. Our agencies made a lot of, with Northland Assistance Center, we've made a lot of changes, and I hope other agencies have too. We're getting a lot of first time, never in the system kind of people. And we're helping people, particularly with rent, even if they do not have an eviction notice, which is generally required by agencies, if they'll allow us to send a portion of that rent in. And all of the apartment complexes are very amenable to doing that. So we're trying to adjust our way of thinking as not-for-profits, or at least I can't speak for them all, my not-for-profit, to accommodate these extraordinary needs, because every single person who's been in my office this week has never been in the system before, every single person. So I think that really says a lot about the changes that are going on. And I do appreciate, Kim, you're working with my agency, because we are easy to get to. And thank you for the referrals, and thank you to the community for donations of food that I'm starting to get in, which is really necessary because we can't get the food from harvesters that we need for my agency. So just wanted to say that while we're on this topic.
Was there anybody else that wanted to be recognized on this topic? All right. Well, thank you, and staff will do our best to look for any way possible to assist both businesses and residents. And I'll get to you the answers on the questions that you asked. That brings us to item 19.
An ordinance approving accounts due and payable by the city through April 3rd, 2020. Bill number 7501, ordinance number 9298.
First reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Councilmember Pearman,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce,
yes,
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
An ordinance approving accounts due and payable by the city through April 3rd, 2020.
Call roll.
Well, could we have a motion to approve on second reading?
I move that bill number 7501 be placed on second and final reading and pass as ordinance number 9298.
Second.
Councilmember Pearman,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce,
yes,
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
An ordinance approving accounts due and payable by the city through April 3rd, 2020.
The next item is staff comments. So I will begin. There are a number of reports in your packet. Upcoming city items of note. If you look at that, you'll see that a number of items have been canceled. And since the time that this was published, some other items have also been canceled. For example, the Arts in the Park Festival. Councilmember Pearman.
I had a question about that. For the ones that we control, what is the plan for cancellation? Like, for example, on the animal vaccination day, is there a certain point in time that you decide to proceed with that or not to proceed? And what's your thought?
We actually, on that one, just got word today. We did talk to the veterinarian. That has been rescheduled for a day in June. I changed it on the one that's going to be in your next packet. I forget the date offhand, but the animal vaccination day has been rescheduled, and hopefully when it rolls around in, I think it's late June, this emergency will be behind us. We have not made any decisions on the community shred event that we canceled. So it kind of goes on a case by case basis largely, but of course, most of these items are parks and recreation. Yes, ma'am. Councilmember Pearman.
Thank you. So I would just say on the citywide garage sale, that's one that we may want to decide early on as opposed to waiting too close to that date.
That's a point well taken. Of course, nobody knows exactly where we're going to be, but I think it's a good bet that on May 16th, we will not be in a position to have that garage sale. And I'd be happy to make that call. And we can, of course, there is another citywide garage sale that's scheduled in September. We'll look at rescheduling that at some point when the emergency is passed.
Thank you.
Any other questions about the upcoming city items of note? Also in your packet is the status of projects and purchases report. If you've had a chance to look at that, you may have noticed that there are many items in which it says that they are on hold, pending a better understanding of how the coronavirus pandemic will affect city finances. So we're going to put, as I said, I have moved forward some projects to you that you took action on tonight that were in the middle, so to speak, but items that really have not begun at all. We intend to put a hold on until we have a better handle. We'll probably have some kind of discussion with you all when we have a better handle on the financial effects of this. Some of these projects will proceed and some of them probably will not. But we've reflected our best as to you as to exactly what the status is as of this moment. The quarterly strategic plan update is in your packet. We give that to you every 3 months or so. There is a memo in your packet on the water treatment plant project status. That is a project with about, as Pat indicated earlier, about a $13 million projected price tag for construction. This is a pretty crucial project to us, and I'm getting a text from the city clerk that tells me the shred event is on June 20th. So there you go. The water treatment plant project, we do see us recommending that we move this forward to you. A fair amount of the project has already been transferred to the water fund budget, but there would have been about a $6 million transfer from gaming to finish that. And we just think it would be wise just to wait just a little while. But we are ready to bid that out when the time comes. The design is complete. That itself cost about $2.4 million per contract with Burns and McDonnell. And there's also in your packet a memo on an emergency authorization that the mayor did approve. This came after we'd been notified by KCATA that they wished to stop charging fares. At the time that they contacted us anyway, they indicated that this was on a jurisdiction by jurisdiction basis, and that the main reason they wanted to do it is they didn't want money to change hands, because there's a whole lot of handling that way. But we thought we might be in a situation where somebody would not pay a fare in Kansas City, but then when they come through North Kansas City, they might have to pay. So they asked us if we would not sacrifice the revenue that would have come in from fares, and that's about a $700 a week hit according to the estimate at the time. And we did ask the mayor, and he did approve that authorization. Of course, as you know now, the KCATA is also curtailing service, so probably fares wouldn't have been $700 a week anyway, given where things seem to be going. Also, I would note that the Harris Charitable Fund Grants Award Breakfast has been canceled. Harris is going to send checks directly to the recipients of the Harris Charitable Funds this year. At this point, I'd like to call on Community Development Director Sarah Copeland to talk about a parking maintenance agreement for the Curran Lofts parking structure. Sarah?
Yes, so we continue to work with the developer of the Curran Park Lofts on that project, and all of the engineering, architectural, legal, financial work that's going into getting them to the point of starting construction. Part of that is the development of a parking structure maintenance agreement between the city and the developer that will lay out how we will jointly maintain the shared parking garage that's part of that project. Our outside legal counsel has advised us that it is important for us to decide not the details of whether or how much or when we would charge people for parking in the structure, but just whether or not we intend to. And it's as staff's feeling that it would be important for us to charge an overtime amount. So that for example, someone could park their vehicle for 2 hours for free, but then would need to pay if they were parking longer than that. We can discuss at a later point the exact details. Is it 2 hours? Is it 4 hours? Is how much? But it is our intention to notify our outside legal counsel to go ahead and put in the agreement that we would charge something, because that's all he needs to know at this point. And then that would be in the agreement when it comes before you for approval at a later time. But we wanted to let you know about that at this point.
Are there any questions about that? Okay. Thank you, Sarah. Would just like to note, we have had a couple of agendas ago, we had on your agenda an item regarding how to change the traffic pattern on Armour Road due to the closure of the Quick Trip store at 1010 Armour. We presented several options in a memo to you, and we do have an idea that there might not be a unanimity of opinion on this on the council, and just because as we kind of ease into these virtual council meetings, we've been trying to keep the agendas relatively simple. So that's why it hasn't come back to you, but at some point right now with less traffic on Armour and all, it's not as not really an urgent issue, but we will be bringing that back to you at some point for you to make a decision on that. Would note the timing on this was unfortunate, I think, but you approved a citizen survey and a business survey through ETC Institute. And just as this crisis came upon us, we got word from ETC that they had sent out the surveys and everything was in process and it was too late to pull it back. So we got word today that they have gotten all the surveys back that they needed in order to prepare a report on the results. So at some point we will see that. And now, we had actually intended to have them come to your next work session on April 21st to present the results of that of the surveys. I will confess that I'm a little concerned that the surveys may be skewed by the recent crisis, and I'm just not sure offhand how truly representative this particular survey might be given the timing of it. But we would probably want to defer this work session, not because we don't want to talk about the results, but when ETC presents the results, as you may recall from those of you who've been on the council when they've come in the past, they show you all kinds of graphs and things, all kinds of benchmarking data comparing the city's performance on a question to the last time we did a survey, comparing how we do on a question to other cities of our that are in a similar cohort to us. So it doesn't seem to us that the assistant city administrator and me that they could present a good report to you. So we would like to hold off on them coming to you and making that report until after we have the ability to get back together in person. So that would be our intention. And lastly, I would just note that earlier in the agenda, on the consent agenda, you approved a local government week proclamation. And I just want to say that, this is a difficult time for all. We know it's a difficult time for our small businesses and for many of our large businesses. And an awful lot of people in your local government are really going above and beyond right now to serve the public. And I just want to express my thanks to everybody who is on the city staff is working to make that happen. So with that, that concludes staff comments. And at this point, we've reached the council member comments, a portion of the agenda. And at this point, then I would call on Council Member Pearman.
Well, that's a good segue, Mr. Berlin, because I was going to say thank you to the staff and also to the council for being able to pivot and adapt to the world around us. And it's quite a challenging world right now. And also my heart goes out to those who are struggling, both personally and businesses who are struggling, both small and large, frankly. And somehow we'll get through this. So we'll just hang tight. But thank you, everybody.
Councilmember Clevenger.
I want to echo Valerie's comments as far as the staff have been very good about keeping us abreast of what's going on, how the situation is changing. This is something that we've never really been through before. We're learning on the fly, staff's learning on the fly. I think that they've done a great job. I think a lot of our residents and citizens and businesses have done a great job as well. I want to echo Bryant's comments on helping the business community any kind of legal way we can, whether it be through the business council or through other ways, or maybe creating some buzz or some reason for people to get back to North Kansas City. I know we didn't have Snake Saturday, but maybe we can have, some fall festival or spring, summer thing. We just don't know yet until all this plays out. So, hopefully we're flattening the curve. I know at one point we were talking about having in mid-June a meeting on Armour Road and kind of deciding on that, looking at traffic studies. Based on this information now with COVID, there's not a lot of traffic on Armour Road, so I don't know how we would adjust that study or if we need to push that meeting back even further. It's just something to throw out there. Those are the comments that I had.
Thank you, sir. Can you hear me, everybody?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah. Of course, we feel the pain of our business community. They are our lifeblood, and without them, we're just a bedroom community. And nothing against Avondale, but be like Avondale. We couldn't do anything without our business community. Whatever we can legally do to help them, and I like Zach's idea of if maybe putting something together even in the fall. We don't know when this thing's going to end. It's going to have, to me, more of an effect than the economic downturn of 2008-9, because nobody had to close during that. And we don't know what the effect is going to be for the city. So how much we can help, but whatever we can do, our business community and residents probably don't understand, a lot of them, that we're restricted on what we can do being a third-class city. A lot of the cities like Kansas City can do things on their own that we can't do. But we feel their pain. Marilyn and I, we've been going through everybody's drive-through and stuff that we can. I appreciate everybody that's working during this. They're really putting themselves the risk. We went to the grocery store probably 3 times during this. There's no 6-foot distance between you and the cashier. I feel sorry for these people, and the people that losing their jobs on account of this. We don't know where it's going to go, but one thing about it, we're all in the same basket. So we're going to have to figure it out, and we will. Thank you.
Councilmember Stephan.
Yes, I'd like to say, express what everyone else has pretty much said. And it's difficult times we're going through right now. I've never seen anything this severe as far as contraction. And I'm talking about economic contraction in my lifetime. On the jobs report that came out on the last Friday, that only went through March 12th. And your unemployment rate went from 3.5% to 4.4%, the biggest increase since about 1975 or 76 for 1 month. But that report is not all of it, because afterwards, the cutoff date was March 12th. After March 12th, 9.9, almost 10 million people filed for unemployment. That's going to be, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that you're going to have a double-digit unemployment. The economy can't work. And it's not the financial problem that caused this. It's a sickness. It's a virus. And there's no vaccine. I don't see a vaccine coming. I hear talk that it's going to be a year. So it's very difficult times. And I want to express my appreciation to the city employees who are working through this difficult time, especially the city employees that are working, their bodies come to work and they're out face to face with the public. And it's even extra specially want to express my appreciation to the first responders, the ambulance people, the fire people, firefighters, and the police officers. And I'm going to tell you something real quick, just what the job is of being a police officer. They have a deal you can put over your head so people don't spit on you. That's what they're facing. And people are going to get violent and spitting. So that's about all I have to say. Oh, except, we had a problem of some individual breaking into a fire station. And that's something we don't need at all. I hope that case will be pursued with great vigor. That's all I have. Thank you.
Councilmember Farr.
Yes, I want to thank all the city employees. I really want to thank Stephen for bringing it all together. Without his help, I would be lost. So thank you very much, Stephen. These times are tough for everybody. There are some of us that are working and some of us aren't. What's better, the ones that are working, we're not safe. We have to deal with the public every day and then take whatever we've gotten at work home to our loved ones. Because trust me, I don't strip out in my front yard, take my clothes off before I go in the house. And I doubt if anybody else does. You're all laughing at me, but you know exactly what I'm saying. So I don't see any end in sight for a long time. I'm afraid. I don't want to be a pessimist, but I can see this going until the middle towards the end of the summer. So we're all going to have to stay strong and at least try to think positive. That's the only thing I can say right now. So everybody just think positive and go on down the road. And if we can help our neighbors, our friends, our loved ones, or whatever, please do. Because we're all in this together. Thank you very much.
Councilmember DeLong.
All right, I got a few things. First of all, I think this meeting and the way it's been conducted really shows that under these circumstances, we're still able to conduct essential city business and we're still able to get things done. So again, as he said before, thanks Stephen and all the staff that's worked on putting this together. Another thing, I saw we are still charging late fees on late water payments. Has there been any consideration to waive the late fees? Because a lot of these people, they aren't paying because they don't want to, they're now paying because they can't.
We did make a decision to do that if the council told us that you didn't wish to do that, then that is something that's a policy decision that you could make. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I just feel like that's really tough on people, especially in this next couple months, that you're really piling it on them here for a late fee. Well, so I guess a late fee, would that even apply to like a partial payment as well, right?
I'm sorry, sir, could you repeat that?
I'm sorry. So if someone paid part of their bill, would they still be charged a late fee?
Yes. I'll tell you what, why don't I put this on your agenda, your next agenda? And if you all want to make the decision not to do that, then, but I do think I don't think you can give that to us during this portion of the agenda, but I can put that on your next agenda. And if you direct us not to charge late fees, then we won't.
Okay,
all right.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, sir.
And then I just kind of wanted an update, I guess it would be from Eric, on city staff on how work from home is going for staff and kind of what's going on the city staff level.
Well, so first of all, most of our first responders are continuing to work their regular shifts. We are not cut back into staffing there at all. Then we do have a number of staff that are sort of on split shifts, so that everybody, some people are being paid and not working for maybe a part of the pay period, but then the other half of that team is at City Hall doing necessary things. We are paying everybody at the present time. I hope the council will continue to support that for the foreseeable future. And then in terms of people working from home, I've been really pleasantly surprised by how much we're getting done doing it this way. I do think that there are a number of people who have family considerations that make working from home really much more difficult than it is, for example, for me. I mean, I have a college kid at home, and but some of our folks have small children that now with them all staying at home and having to be homeschooled, so to speak, it's hard to be both a parent and a full-time worker. But people are still getting quite a bit done here in this new environment of stay at home. We have good technology that allows us to do that. So all in all, I'd say the stay at home part of the equation is working pretty well.
All right. And then I just want to thank all staff for their work. I mean, it's definitely, like you said, it's difficult being at home. And I'm someone that already works from home usually 2 or 3 days a week, but those extra 2 really make me want to pull my hair out sometimes here. The kids are running around and screaming at me all day, just trying to get the regular work done. So I definitely appreciate that and understand that. And then want to get an update from Chief Freeman, if he is on still. Is he still on?
Chief Freeman? Kevin, are you on?
Yep. I'm here.
There you go. All right, so yeah, just a couple of questions. How has I got two questions here. How has the crime level been? And I feel like I've seen Pacey posted a tweet where they've seen an increase in speeding, an increase in traffic accidents. Are we seeing anything similar here in North Kansas City?
Our traffic accidents are not up at all. The volume of traffic is way down. I've seen the same things you've seen. Kansas City obviously can cover a lot more interstate and looking for those high volume speeders out there, and they are doing it. Our crime rate overall, I think probably we'd consider it down right now. We are starting to see an uptick in disturbances, domestics, stuff like that. So not to the level of a lot of criminal reports that have been made, but a lot of activity for us to be responding on.
Okay. And then I had just gotten a message tonight about potentially people drag racing up and down Burlington. Have you seen anything along those regards?
That's the first I've heard of it. So no.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
And then since I'm going around to everyone here, I might as well get Chief Hargis as well. How's everything going with the fire department? Sorry.
As far as going pretty good. We're like every other fire department, EMS agency in the region. We're scrambling to try to find more PPE for our guys, but our runs are continually increasing, but so far so good. We did have the advantage to have a fire the other night, which kind of took everybody's minds off COVID. But everything so far is going good and stable. I'm participating in a regional group to try to get more PPE for us in this area. So we're kind of in the same boat with everybody else, but everything's looking good so far.
Okay. And so the police department, are they having similar PPP issues as well?
Yeah, absolutely. We got a state allotment for the county just earlier at the end of last week, and there was only 105 N95 masks allotted for every police agency in the county outside of Kansas City. Kansas City had their own specific allotment.
Oh, for every municipality, for every other agency.
Gladstone, Kearney, Sheriff's Department, us, you name it. There was 105 N95 masks to split between everybody.
All right. Well,
yeah, we're having the same.
Not a good way to end these, but yeah, that is a horrible update. All right, and then my final item, as I mentioned earlier, the potential for a large infrastructure bill could be down the corner. So if we could get some of these projects ready, and what I kept hearing on the call the other day was shovel-ready projects. I don't know how many of those we necessarily have or what that would look like, but whatever we can do to potentially be ready to look for grants. And I know that wouldn't filter straight to us, but we'd have to apply to another agency. Just want to throw that out there. Thank you.
Councilmember Pierce.
Well, everybody's already said all the thanks. I also thank everyone who is working, all staff, all the first responders. I'm continuing to work and distance myself from people and practice the appropriate cleansing of my office and whatnot. There have been a lot of negative things, and there are a lot of negative things going on here, but there's also been just a community spirit that's overwhelming to me every single day. It's been really odd, and I've spoke to my friends and my family about it, that this has united people in ways that we would not normally be united in. And I think it's also taught us that we're not all as important as we think we are, that we can take some time down. And it's important to do that and to reach out to your family and your friends and your community and, say hi to each other from each other's porches. And I'm seeing a lot of that. And I know that there's a lot of negative things going on, and I know people are hurting, but I'm seeing people go way out of their way to try to help people as much as they can. I too go through the drive-throughs as often as I can. And I see other members of my community and of our staff and city council do the same. On a different note, I want to say thank you to Harris, because I'm one of the recipients of their grant, and how lovely of them to think about getting these checks out in a timely manner as they usually do, because every agency that's being awarded these grants needs this money more now than they ever have before. And that's pretty much all I have to say. I just wanted to say something positive because, I'm feeling negative as well. But more importantly, I'm really feeling filled with a sense of pride in all the communities all over. And I look for those happy stories, not those bad stories at night. And that's what I go to bed with, not the dire situation. I look to the more positive. Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
First off, great job, everybody. This meeting went surprisingly smoothly. Working the mute buttons on and off. Stephen, thanks so much for setting that up, and Eric and everybody that was involved. As Rita was just saying, this is a tough time for everybody, but it really has brought out the best in friends and neighbors, people out walking, waving, just happy to be outside. There was a community box of produce that CNC, one of our local spots, put on and was massively successful. Been walking around the park a lot. I've noticed the new trees going in. Thank you to the Parks Department for getting that going in this time. So we've had a lot of new tree plantings in. Very nice. I want to just continue to reiterate supporting local businesses. I've been working on my can of kombucha from the Brookery during the meeting. So Brian's got one there as well. Keep supporting these local businesses. It's our dollars that's going to keep them alive. If you have the means, if you don't, look out for your family. But if you can, support those local businesses. One other thing we mentioned is if landlords have been forgiving rent, by no means is that a requirement. But I do know that Kent Mayfield, who is a landlord at NKC Nutrition and FM Music down on 18th, he postponed or pushed rent for April. Made a great gesture to his tenants. So let's commend him for that. And then just a word for everybody to stay safe, keep practicing that social distancing, and let's flatten this curve right out. Thanks.
Mayor Stila.
Thank you, everybody. Move to adjourn.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn. Brian.
Second.
DeLong, seconded by Pierce. Can you call the roll, please?
Yes. Councilmember Pearman,
Yes.
Councilmember Clevenger,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Stewart,
Yes.
Councilmember Stefan,
Yes.
Councilmember Farr,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember DeLong,
Yes.
Councilmember Pierce,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Sure. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.